1. Diminished communication. At the start of a relationship, communication flows effortlessly, texts, calls, and spontaneous conversations. The connection feels alive, and you both seem to have time for each other. But over time, if you notice that she's not initiating contact as often, or her responses are brief and distant, it could signal a shift in her emotional investment. This change may be subtle at first, but it's important to recognize it. Why it happens. When someone's emotional energy begins to fade, so does their interest in keeping the lines of communication open. It's natural for people to get busy, but if you were still a priority in her life, she would make an effort to connect, even if just for a brief moment. If you're feeling the distance, it may be because she is no longer as emotionally invested in maintaining the connection. How to identify the shift. Pay close attention to the frequency of her messages. Are your conversations becoming one-sided? Do you notice a growing silence between you two? When someone is truly invested, even a packed schedule doesn't prevent them from sending a quick message or checking in. If she's no longer reaching out, it may be a sign that her interest has waned. Emotional insight, Stoic perspective. The Stoics teach us to focus on our own reactions and to accept what we cannot control. You cannot control someone else's emotional investment or communication habits. Instead, practice acceptance. Don't take the shift personally. It's part of the natural ebb and flow of relationships. Reflect on the past few days. How often has she reached out to you? If there's been a noticeable change, acknowledge it without judgment. Consider whether you want to address it or allow things to unfold naturally. 2. Less effort in planning time together. In a healthy relationship, both people actively plan quality time together, whether it's a special date or just enjoying each other's company. This effort demonstrates mutual care and commitment. However, if you start to notice that she's no longer suggesting plans or making an effort to spend time with you, it may indicate a shift in her priorities. Why it happens. As feelings evolve, the enthusiasm to create shared experiences begins to fade. She may no longer see the point in investing time and effort into something that feels like it's already on its way out. If the connection is weakening, she might no longer feel the desire to plan fun or meaningful moments together. How to identify the shift. Are you always the one initiating plans? Does it seem like you're pushing to make time for each other while she's just going along with it? This imbalance is a strong indicator that her interest and investment have diminished, and her focus may be shifting elsewhere. Emotional insight, Stoic perspective. Stoicism encourages us to focus on our internal state, our peace and emotional stability, rather than external circumstances like someone else's lack of effort. If her priorities are changing, it's important not to let that disturb your emotional balance. Recognize that you cannot control her actions, but you can choose how you respond. Pay attention to whether you're always the one initiating plans. If you notice this pattern, reflect on how you want to handle it. Will you address it directly and openly, or will you let the situation unfold naturally? Trust yourself to navigate this dynamic with clarity and grace. 3. Withdrawal from physical affection. Physical affection is one of the strongest indicators of emotional connection in a relationship. Hugs, kisses, and simple gestures of closeness reflect care and intimacy. If these affectionate behaviors begin to fade, it's a powerful signal that you might no longer be at the top of her emotional priority list. Why it happens. When someone's emotional investment in a relationship wanes, their need or desire for physical closeness also diminishes. She might feel emotionally distant, disengaged, or simply less attached. As a result, the physical affection that once came naturally starts to diminish, leaving you feeling disconnected. How to identify the shift? Notice if she's pulling away when you try to hold her hand or initiate a cuddle. Has the frequency of affection decreased significantly? Pay attention to any signs of discomfort or avoidance when you try to get physically close. If she's becoming less responsive to physical touch, this could indicate a deeper emotional withdrawal. Emotional insight, Stoic perspective. From a Stoic perspective, we recognize that external changes, such as a partner's withdrawal of affection, do not define our worth or happiness. Instead, our peace is found within, and our emotional responses are a reflection of how we choose to interpret the situation. By accepting these changes with understanding rather than frustration or resentment, we maintain our emotional equilibrium and can let go with grace. Take note of how physical affection has shifted. Is it something you feel the need to address directly, or does it seem like a natural course of events? Trust your instincts and approach the situation with emotional clarity, remembering that your worth is not defined by someone else's actions. 4. Less interest in your life and goals. At the beginning of a relationship, your partner shows genuine curiosity about your passions, goals, and the details of your life. She asks about your day, your challenges, and your dreams for the future. But if this interest starts to fade, and she no longer asks or shows concern about your growth, it's a clear sign that her emotional investment in the relationship might be diminishing. Why it happens. As feelings evolve, a person may lose the emotional drive to stay engaged in the details of their partner's life. When someone no longer envisions a future with you, they stop asking about your ambitions or celebrating your progress. This detachment is often a reflection of the distance growing between both parties. How to identify the shift? Reflect on how often she inquires about your day, your challenges, or your goals. When you talk about your plans, does she seem disinterested or distracted? If you feel like you're speaking to a brick wall or she rarely shows interest in your growth anymore, it could be a strong indicator that she's no longer prioritizing your aspirations or emotional connection. Emotional insight, Stoic perspective. The Stoics remind us that our happiness and fulfillment should not depend on someone else's interest in us. We must develop and pursue our goals independently, regardless of whether our partner shares the same enthusiasm. This detachment from external validation enables us to remain steadfast in our personal journey, regardless of any changes in the relationship. Look inward. Do you still feel supported, valued, and inspired in your relationship? If not, consider whether this shift is temporary or a deeper signal that you may need to refocus on your personal growth and aspirations. 5. Reduced emotional support. Setting the scene. Emotional support is one of the core pillars of a healthy relationship. When things get tough, having a partner who listens and offers encouragement is invaluable. However, if you notice that she's no longer there during your challenges, not offering the comforting words or reassurance you once relied on, it could signal that she's emotionally withdrawn from the relationship. Why it happens. Emotional withdrawal often occurs when someone is no longer fully invested in the relationship. If she's distanced herself, her emotional energy may be depleted, or it could be diverted elsewhere. Without that emotional connection, the motivation to offer support diminishes, and she may stop engaging in the comforting or uplifting behaviors that were once routine. How to identify the shift. Have you found yourself turning to friends, family, or even strangers for the emotional support you once received from her? Are you facing struggles on your own, without the comfort of her presence. If you're starting to feel isolated in your emotional needs, it's a clear sign that the balance of support has shifted. Emotional insight, Stoic perspective. The Stoics teach us to cultivate self-reliance. While it's completely natural to seek emotional support from a partner, we must understand that our peace and resilience come from within. We cannot control or depend on others for our emotional well-being. By focusing on our internal strength, we can navigate difficult moments without being overly reliant on external validation. Take a step back and reflect. Are you depending too much on someone else for emotional support? If she's no longer providing that, this may be the moment to embrace your inner resilience. Lean into your own strength and focus on growing emotionally independent. 6. Decreased appreciation for your efforts. In a healthy and balanced relationship, there's an understanding and acknowledgement of each other's efforts. You show appreciation for the little things they do, and they do the same for you. However, if you've noticed a lack of gratitude or recognition for your actions, whether it's the thoughtful gestures, the texts, or the general ways you show you care, it could be a sign that she's emotionally disengaged from the relationship. Why it happens. When someone is no longer emotionally invested, the little things start to go unnoticed. The acts of kindness, the effort you put into making her feel loved, or the small sacrifices you make may start to feel like a one-way street. She might not even be consciously aware of her lack of acknowledgement, as her emotional energy is already focused elsewhere. How to identify the shift? Pay attention to whether she's recognizing your efforts. Are you the only one showing appreciation or making an effort, while it feels like your actions are met with indifference or apathy? If your gestures are no longer being acknowledged, this could be an indication that her emotional connection is weakening. Emotional insight, Stoic perspective. The Stoics remind us that our actions should come from a place of love and integrity, not from the expectation of validation or recognition. We cannot control how others respond, only the intentions behind our own actions. If your efforts go unnoticed, do not let it affect your sense of self-worth. Acknowledgement may not always come, but that doesn't lessen the value of your actions. Reflect on why you're making the effort. Are you doing it out of love, or are you seeking recognition? If you feel unappreciated, it may be time to re-evaluate where you invest your energy and whether your emotional needs are being met in this relationship. 7. Lack of future conversations. In a healthy, committed relationship, there's often a natural flow of conversations about the future, vacations you'd like to take, where you want to live, or even bigger dreams and life goals. If she's stopped bringing up plans for the future together or seems uncomfortable when you try to discuss them, it may signal that she's emotionally detaching from the relationship. Why it happens. When someone no longer sees a future with you, the idea of discussing long-term plans can become uncomfortable. They may avoid these conversations because acknowledging a future together would force them to confront the reality of the relationship's decline. This avoidance is often a sign that the emotional investment is fading. How to identify the shift. Think back to when you and she would eagerly discuss plans for the future. If those conversations have stopped, or she seems uninterested or distant when the topic arises, it's a sign that emotional distance is growing between you two. This shift is a powerful indicator that something has changed. Emotional insight, Stoic perspective. The Stoics teach us to focus on the present moment and not get caught up in unnecessary anxiety about the future. However, in relationships, the ability to plan together is often a reflection of emotional investment. If these discussions stop, it's an important moment to reflect on the status of the relationship. Rather than worrying about the future, acknowledge what's happening now and assess the emotional connection. Take a moment to assess where the relationship is heading. If future conversations are scarce or uncomfortable, consider whether it's time to confront the reality of where you both stand. Use this clarity to reflect on what you truly want from the relationship and what steps to take moving forward. The 7 subtle changes discussed: diminished communication, decreased effort, withdrawal from affection, lack of interest in your life, reduced emotional support, decreased appreciation, and a lack of future conversations, are all signs that you may no longer be her priority. These shifts often reflect a growing emotional distance and a lack of investment in the relationship. Recognizing these changes early allows you to assess the situation and make decisions that are in alignment with your own well-being. Stoicism teaches us to accept what is beyond our control, like someone else's feelings or actions, and focus instead on how we choose to respond. By acknowledging the reality of a relationship's changes, we can avoid unnecessary suffering and find peace in letting go when the time comes. This perspective offers strength and clarity in moments of emotional uncertainty. If you've noticed these shifts in your relationship, take a step back and reflect. How will you respond to these changes? Will you gracefully accept the situation or hold on to something that's no longer there? Prioritize your own emotional well-being and consider taking steps that lead to personal growth and a stronger future, free from unnecessary emotional distress.